I had a I had a bunch of things I wanted to say. So Israel. No, let's not go there first. So I used to have. I don't know if where I want to start, or if I even want to start. What could we do for Israel? So what happened to Israel? Israel went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. They'd serve God, they wouldn't serve God. They'd serve God, they wouldn't serve God. They'd serve God, they wouldn't serve God. And every time they wouldn't serve God, God, kind of holds back his hand from them. Lets their enemies have them. Lets them not have their enemies. And, every time he takes them back when they want to come back to him. And ultimately, these whores, that's what God calls them all over the Old Testament. They're whores who want to go constantly whoring around with other gods. He constantly takes them back, and that's God. You all won't, but will you do that? Your wife goes whoring around. How often are you going to take her back before you're finally done with her? But no, God took them back every single time, and ultimately he came down and he died for them. They actually killed him. After he took them back every single time, they end up murdering him. So we're talking about Romans and grace. Like, why do we do works? Works, grace. If we're saved by grace, it can't be of works. And if it's of works, then there is no grace. Then it's not grace. And essentially, what Muslims believe is they're saved by God's grace. They don't know. They're not sure how that grace works, but they're like, we're saved by God's grace. Jews, I don't know. I don't want to get started. But that's what Muslims believe. They're saved by God's grace. Ultimately, the only reason they're going to be saved is because God somehow has grace for them. They don't know how much good works they have to do. They don't know how much sin they have to not have in their life. Ultimately, God could even punish one person and send them to hell who has the exact same record as someone else. That's their God. Because that's one of the things. If you want, that's the thing about like the court case analogy. Is if you've committed a crime, like, so you have a court case. Can the judge let you off? Yes, he can. But who does he let off and who doesn't he? Because in Christianity, the idea is you commit a crime, God has to judge you. Every single person who's ever committed a crime, he has to judge. You have, in the analogy, you have to go to prison. But ultimately today, there's people, you don't have to go to prison. Some people, you can do community service. You can say, oh, judge, I won't do it again. But like, how do you decide which one and which one? But because one person who is who has all the past and all the stuff that's in there, or has all this past history, and they commit the crime, and then person two has all the the same things in their past, maybe more, maybe less, but the same things, and like one person's let off, then the other person's not. But that's not a just God. And ultimately, so what Muslims are relying on is somehow God's going to have this grace towards them. They don't know, but it's somewhat some grace. They don't even know what the grace is. With Christianity, we know what that grace is because he died for us. Is because the God of these Jews who constantly disobeyed and came back and disobeyed and came back, and then ultimately God had to sacrifice himself for God. They killed him and as the sacrifice for their sins. Because one, works can't save you. And when you do works, it's like, why are you doing the works? Because you have to have this foundation. And what do you build your foundation with? And because, in Christianity, we don't work, we work because we have God's grace in us. And that is why we do the works. It's Christ in us working that helps us to do the works. We do the works because of Christ who is in us, which all came from him dying for our sins in our place and being the high priest so that now God's presence can be with us at all times. But why do other people do the works? Do they do it for themselves? Do they do it for some other reason? Do they do it because they're trying to get to heaven? What purpose are they doing those works? And what are I don't know. And ultimately, where does the works end and the grace begins? So, like, what are you building your house with? So in the Bible, it says you can build your house with straw, wood, rocks, gems, gold, metals. I forget all the things it says. And ultimately, it's going to all be burned up with fire. And there's a couple ways of looking at that. The first way is, it is about like the works, the things you do, or the works you do almost. Like, I want to say, like, what are you building your house with? Like, what are you relying on? So so that's one way of looking at it is, once it is all burned up, it burns up all the stuff that is basically not of God. And then what is left? And then there's another hand I never thought about until tonight. I'm going to go over the first one first, because what I had originally thought, maybe even what this verse actually is about, or maybe it's both. Anyways. So one thing about it is, what are you building your house with? Because if your house is entirely built of sin, but let's say you are a Christian, once it's all burned up, like, you're still going to escape the fire, you're still going to get to heaven, but like, what is left of that? Because if you spend all of your time, even money, your energy, let's just say all your time, into sin, like, what is even left? Like, if all you do is if all you do all day is, like, once you have done all your work and now you're retired or something, or even pre-retirement, whatever, what do you do with your time? Are you just reading books and novels? Are you reading books that are about about witchcraft? Are you reading books about sin, full of eroticism, cursing, violence, crime, bad guys suffering and dying, and you're whatever, and all these other things that just aren't in heaven? Same with movies. Like, are you filling up your time watching these people who just gossip or put people down, or greed, sex, drugs, alcohol, partying, cussing, reviling, greed, malicious people, and lasciviousness, all the other bad things that you're just filling all of your mind with, and that's all you do is read these books, watch these TVs, these movies, even the news shows, which are just anyways just bad. And then what is even going to get left once all that stuff is burned off? And what did you do? Like, your works, why did you do them? Like, in heaven, there could be, I don't know what heaven's like. I don't want to go there. I talked about that anyways. But like, when you work, like, you can get joy from work. Like, you can get joy from working, doing it for the Lord, doing it heartily, doing things that God wants you to do, or just doing it for God, or to be an example or a testimony for God, or to be able to provide for your family and your family's family and your children's and children and other things, people, places. One thing I learned tonight, so military, like, our taxes go to military. and military does things that is ungodly. I found out tonight that, one of the, like, that's why I don't. For instance, where are I wanted to say something, but I guess I don't want to say it. Maybe I don't know fully what's going on there. But there's this, okay, I won't go there, but like, where's I going? Anyways, so what we do it, like why we do it. And ultimately, like, it's all burned up. Like, just for instance, you got California, all the rich people, you make all your money, but what do you even do with it? Are you helping people? Now that you're retired, are you still helping people? Are you still working, volunteering, using your time and your gifts that you have to somehow benefit others? Are you giving it to your children? Are you just spending it all? Are you just hiding it away for, I don't know what it's going to go into eventually? Is it offshore in the Cayman Islands? Is that why? Never mind. Like, what's going on? And then it's just like burn up. And then, like, what are you left with? Like, what do you have going for you? What can you fill your time with? What do you have on earth that can be bound in heaven? I do want to get into the military. So, like, what can we do with the military? Because we're doing something wrong with our military. And there's something that there's something we are just doing wrong, and there might be even other stuff, and that's where, like, I don't know, anyways. But what can we be doing with our military? Because one thing is, I don't know, we need to use the military to somehow spread the gospel. I don't know what that means, though. I don't know what that means. That's just what I don't know, that's what I thought of if there's some sort of reason of something that we're doing wrong or something, it's because we need to be using the military to somehow spread the gospel. If I wanted to hypothesize, we could destroy entire nations, quite frankly. But what would get to that point, and why, and what would we do? Because, so that's the other thing. So one of the other verses is, God stirred up Israel to jealousy against a nation who wasn't a nation. What happened then? Israel kind of picked a fight with another nation who wasn't even a nation, and then that nation basically destroyed them, attacked them, and Israel basically lost. So I don't know how that plays out. If I had to say, like, let's say if someone does want to go against, eventually all nations, all nations more or less are gonna, a lot of nations, I don't know what word I want to use, are gonna be against Israel. And then what happens at that point? Because God still has to be with Israel. And if it got to that point, then it's like we could just press a button and eliminate all of Israel's enemies. But like, I don't know what we would do before that.